Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all our BritCham members and guests attending the event today. My name is Sabina Nair and I work closely with all the British Chamber business committees to deliver the type of events that are taking part in today. The event today is a collaborative event being brought to you from our Startup, Entrepreneur and Small Business Committee and supported by our Healthcare and Life Sciences Committee at the Chamber. Our title is Stress Busting Tips to Boost Mental Resilience. I think we can all agree that in today's world, mental health and stress has become a topic very personal to us all, having to deal with everyday concerns and challenges, and then adding a global pandemic like COVID-19 to the mix. Never more than now are corporates and individuals addressing resilience and coping mechanisms, as we will be touching on in today's webinar. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Alex Mearns, who is the founder and health coach of Levitise, a lifestyle coaching and personal training company with a focus on senior executives. After 20 years in the financial industry, Alex left the corporate world in late 2017 to start Levitise, Singapore's only holistic lifestyle centre. He struggled to get the answers he was looking for to fix his own health problems from the commercial fitness and medical industries. So after many years of studying in holistic health, fitness and nutrition in Singapore, Australia and the United States, Alex set up Levitise to help people like him get the answers and make a real change from the ground up. Alex, a very warm welcome to you, and I'm very much looking forward to learning how to try and improve my mental health and to identify triggers early enough to make a difference. Over to you.
Thank you, Sabina, for that very generous introduction. Hi, everyone. I'll just share my screen and bring up the presentation. Right, here we go. Feel free to put your cameras on. It's not for your benefit, for my benefit, because it's really nice for me to see people, and so I'm like addressing people in the room. So feel free to put them on. I'd really appreciate it. So let's crack on. Stress busting tips to boost mental resilience. That's our topic for today. So we're going to look at hi, Betha. So we're going to look at, we're going to have a little introduction. We're going to talk about different types of stress, how we measure stress, and look at a few solutions, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. But what I really want to focus on is 2 and 3, and really identifying the problem, because anyone can go on the internet and just, Google a bunch of solutions, but a lot of us don't know where we're coming from. So we want to make sure we find the right solution. Thank you guys for putting your cameras on. I really appreciate it. So a little bit about me. So I worked, as Sabina mentioned, I worked in the finance industry or financial research for almost 20 years. And I had my own health problems. I didn't really take care of my health too much. Obviously, dealing with a lot of stress, late nights, working in finance. And I went to the doctor one day and I said, okay, I have all these problems. Can you run some tests? He ran some tests, and I went back to see him, and he says, well, Alex, you've got high cholesterol, you're pre-diabetic, you've got high blood pressure, you're overweight, high BMI. I ran some other tests, some functional medical tests, and I had fungal overgrowth, bacterial dysbiosis, and I had 56 food allergies or 56 food intolerances. So as in, most people would look at me and wouldn't say there was anything, much wrong, but obviously I was aware that there was a lot of stuff going wrong under the hood, and my diet, my lifestyle, and certainly my stress was a big part of that. So I became fascinated in researching about health and holistic health. I didn't want to take the doctor's advice. I didn't want to take a whole bunch of statin drugs and blood pressure lowering medications and things like that. I didn't feel that was a right solution. I have a young family. You can see I've got my boy there on the screen. I didn't feel that was the right thing for me to do. And as I got so passionate about researching health, I decided I'd make a switch from finance to healthcare. So that's how I set up this business. A lot of my friends still work in the finance industry. I have a lot of friends in the legal industry as well. So I still see a lot of stress around me. And I feel like uniquely placed to deal with this coming from the corporate world. So here's an example of a survey we ran just a couple of months back with a financial company, and we asked them a few questions. Which of these things are bothering you, or which of you are suffering from stress and anxiety? Which of you are suffering from fatigue? Which of you are suffering from poor sleep? And which of you, or how many of you, are concerned about, diseases? And as you can see, stress was the big one. 57% of people, almost 60% of people, are suffering from stress and anxiety. It's really high. And of course, if you're suffering from stress, it can have a knock-on effect to your sleep, and maybe you don't get a good night's sleep, which means you feel fatigued. And of course, combine all these three problems, and then you invite disease into the body. So it's really interesting that stress is the main one, because it's also the one that we really need to look at from a root perspective. It doesn't matter how healthy you're eating, and how you're exercising. If you're mentally stressed, it's going to have a definite effect. So if you are feeling a little bit stressed, it's really common at the moment. It's really, really common. So what are some of the common causes of stress in our life? I'd love it if you could just get in the chat box and throw something in there. Let me just go. Let me bring up the chat box. So just give me some examples of stress. Okay. Finances, kids. What else? Husbands, yeah. I don't have one myself, but I gather they can be a bit of a pain. What else? Business disruption, change of job industry. Job security, yeah. So that's great, yeah. Appreciate that. Let's have a look. So here I've pretty much summed up all the main reasons of stress, right? Relationships, and that's close relationships with our family, our friends, our work. We might not think of our friends as a source of stress, but they can be, particularly if they're posting comments which are unfavorable or say things in the wrong way. That can be a source of stress. Obviously, worries over our health, worries over work, finances, job security. Clinically, the three biggest, most stressful sort of documented events are loss of a loved one, a divorce, or moving house. And then I've added these new ones in, right? So stress over COVID, stress over our personal freedoms, and the stress over, when are we getting back to normality? The stress of losing control, and then having, a government, whether it's Singapore, UK, US, it doesn't matter, but feeling that they're more in control and we have less control, and that's very stressful. And then we also have something that a lot of people don't realize that can fill our stress buckets. I'll just go back. So this is our lifestyle stresses. So these are things that are happening around right now, or things that can be bothering us right now about things that are going on in our life. Then we have these repressed emotional stresses. So things that happened in our childhood, things that happened historically, maybe a bad relationship breakup that we never got over. Something like, if we were bullied as a teenager and that's affected the way we go through life, and we can still have a lot of maybe resentment or shame or fear or things like this. And all these negative emotions, they can sit in us for life, filling up our stress buckets. And here are the consequences if we don't work on our stress. And this was very interesting. This was a talk I gave pre-COVID. Actually, I was just mentioning it to Sabina. It was a very, very small workshop I did with some senior executives. As you can see, I've hidden their faces, so you can't recognize them, but you can. The lady, Natalie, was one of the organizers. And I asked these people why they attended, and I remember going to the first guy. He was a lawyer, and he said, well, my friend, she had breast cancer. Then I had another friend who had a heart attack, and then I had another friend who had this disease. And these people are all in their 40s and 50s. And then I went to the next person in the room, and he worked for Standard Chartered, and he says, well, I know 3 people in their 40s and 50s that have had heart attacks. And this was, and I went down, you know, for each one, and each one had the same thing. And I just couldn't believe that we're so familiar, or we know so many people who are dying from diseases which were essentially, you know, previously happened to people who are much, much older. So it's really, really important to get on top of this stuff. And as much as we like to think that, you know, diet is a big part of it, and a big part of you know, diseases that we get, it's actually not. It's actually the stress which causes a lot of the problems. Let me give you an example. If you're eating a Big Mac and large fries and have a large milkshake, or you're thinking about work on a Monday morning, which is the most common time to have a heart attack? It's not after the Big Mac and large fries. It's Monday morning. Monday mornings, that's the most common time to have a heart attack. So it's diet that loads the gun, but it's the stress that pulls the trigger. And I thought this is a really good quote from Woody Allen. I know he's a bit of a controversial figure, but humor often highlights a lot of the realities of the world. And he says, I can't express anger, I grow a tumor instead. And that's quite interesting, because if you look at traditional Chinese medicine, you know, you'll know that anger is stored in the liver, and a lot of people with a lot of repressed anger and rage often end up with conditions such as liver failure or liver cancer. So it's quite interesting. Okay, so let's have a look at measuring stress. So why would we want to measure stress? Why don't you just pop in the chat? Why would we want to measure stress? What would be the point? Can you just, I'd just love to you guys to put in the chat. Why would you, what would be the reason in measuring stress? See if it's getting worse. Yeah. So if you go to the doctors and you have a hard to judge your own feelings, yeah. If you go to the doctors and to understand if we need to seek help, yeah, I think that's a good one. So you can't go to the doctor and say, look, I want some, you know, cholesterol lowering medications, some blood pressure lowering medications, and some anti-inflammatories, X, Y, and Z. First thing he's going to do is he's going to run some blood work, take some measurements, and then he's going to prescribe a course of treatment, and then to see if that gets better or not. And first he's going to see if there's any problems in the first place. So that's really the same thing with everyone. We want to see where we're at, see how serious it is, and then to see if we want to do something about it. We may not want to, but at least we can be aware of what's going on. So does anyone know how we measure stress? Just put it in the chat. How would you measure stress? Yeah, no idea. Sorry, somebody's replied to me directly and said no idea, but yes. Self-awareness, yeah. So this was a really interesting concept to me when I was putting this webinar together, and I was thinking, you know, people don't really know, you know, they know how to measure disease. They can go to the doctor and get checked up. We know how to measure our fitness levels. We can go on a treadmill and blow in an oxygen, you know, to measure your VO2 max. It's quite easy to measure that stuff. You can obviously measure your strength by picking up. But how do we measure our stress levels? So I put together a summary of all the different ways. Yeah. So one thing we can do is ask questions. So for example, we can ask you, are you anxious about your financial situation? What is the magnitude of that? What is it? Are you very anxious? That's a 10 out of 10. Or you're not very anxious? It's a 1 out of 10. How are your relationships? Are any of your relationships causing you stress? Do you find you eat more when you get stressed? Do you find you eat less when you get stressed? So these are questions we can ask. And certainly when it comes to clinical psychology, that's essentially how they, diagnose whether you're clinically depressed or not. They ask you questions. Other things we can look at is heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is a reasonably modern method for measuring the variation in beats between your heart rate. And that can tell you how activated your sympathetic nervous system is and how stressed you are. Something we like the best is the emotional scale. I'm going to show you that, and a hormone panel. And I'm going to show you those two now. So if you have a look over here, I've got this emotional guidance scale, and right at the top are the most positive feelings you could feel. And right at the bottom, the most negative ones, slightly chopped off, but we've got fear, grief, depression, despair, powerlessness, and shame. At the top, we have joy, appreciation, empowerment, freedom, and love. And then in the middle, well, at the sort of the equilibrium state around number 7, we have contentment. So anything below that gets increasingly negative, and anything above that gets increasingly positive. And of course, it's not an exact science, but this is kind of a pretty universal scale, which you can find if you Google on the internet quite easily. And if people are feeling joy and love, and they feel empowered, are they likely to be stressed? Are they likely to feel stressed? And if people are feeling insecure and unworthy and depressed, can we say that they're not stressed? And if you look at this chart, the word stress is not on here. So, and this is something I find very interesting about the industry when we talk about things like stress, but it can mean something very different to very different people. And the only solution we seem to have is, when someone is diagnosed as clinically depressed, or they go and see a psychologist or a psychiatrist who prescribes medical drugs to deal with the sort of depression. But actually, there's many stages before that. But we don't really have any solutions for people. We only have solutions for like number 21 and number 22 when things have got really, really serious. But what about all these stages in between? So this is a very, very good tool you can use, and you can literally do this yourself. You can, what we do is we take a 2-week log with our clients, and we get them to mark where they're feeling as soon as they wake up in the morning and as soon as they go to bed at night. And this is a really good thing you can do, because you can see what your emotional state is like as soon as you get out of bed and just before you go to, as soon as you get out of bed and just before you go to sleep at night. And then you can see if it's, some people feel better in the mornings, worse in the evening. So that's a good indication that something's happening in the day, which is affecting them. Some people feel terrible in the week and great at the weekends. Again, that's something, that you can infer from that. So it's a really, really useful tool. And this is my favorite. It's also free and cheap, and you can do it whenever you want. So that's really good. And then something else you can do is you can run an adrenal panel. So when you are physically, mentally, and emotionally stressed, your adrenal glands, which sit just above your kidneys, release cortisol and adrenaline. And it doesn't matter if you're, in a physically stressful situation or an emotionally stressful situation, i.e. having an argument with your boss, physically exactly the same thing happens. And I'm going to show you exactly, I'm going to prove it to you right now. It's very, very interesting. So this is the first adrenal panel I did, and I did this on myself. So you might need to move the video pictures around so you can see the graph on the right. So what you do is you spit into a tube 4 times in a day, and it measures your stress levels. It measures the amount of cortisol in your saliva. So as you can see, in the morning, when I got out of bed, mine was 11.84, almost 12. and then it dropped. Sample 2 would have been taken around lunchtime, sample 3 would have been mid-afternoon, and sample 4 just before bed. Now the sweet spot would be in the middle of the green here, okay? And that's where it should be. You start off in the morning, you get out of bed, your cortisol is quite high, you're feeling good, you're ready to go, you're kind of pumped up, carpe diem, seize the day. And then slowly it falls throughout the day. And then as it falls, melatonin rises, and then you feel sleepy, go to bed. So what we often see with people is sometimes it's flatlining across here. Sometimes it's really low in the morning. They can't get out of bed, or if they do, they need a couple of coffees. Maybe they exercise late in the evening and then it creates a spike here, and then they have difficulty getting to sleep. Or maybe they got stressed. They started off low, had a very stressful time at work, and then they can't turn the brain off here, and again, have trouble getting to sleep. So we saw these sort of people until what you get is like flatlining. And then people are generally what's called chronic fatigue syndrome, which basically means anytime a doctor says syndrome, it means he doesn't know what's going on. Basically means their adrenal glands are just completely fried. So with mine, I knew, looking at this and having studied functional medicine, that mine was too high. And I was they call this stage 1 adrenal exhaustion. So mine was too high. So my life was too stressful. So what I did was I implemented a protocol that I wrote for myself to reduce my stress, and I did various different things. And then I tested again a few months later, and this is what it looked like. Very, very interesting. It's probably my favorite story. So as you can see in the morning, looked pretty good in the green. And then around lunchtime, it was pretty good. In the afternoon, 0.94, that was good. But had this spike here just before bed. And I was thinking about when I got the test results, why would I spike? What was my stress levels like just before bed? Why would that have been high? And I realized what happened. My wife had just bought me a PlayStation 4 for my birthday. And there was this free game on it called Resident Evil. And I had a virtual reality headset, which she bought as well. So I put this virtual reality headset on, and then you walk around this haunted house. It's so unbelievably scary. It is ridiculously scary. I literally lasted for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I had to take the thing off. And then I realized I had to spit into a tube and run my cortisol levels. And of course, that was the result. And this was very interesting, because this is the universe telling me that, okay, fear releases cortisol, negativity releases cortisol, right? And so that was the proof that this can be affected. And the same would happen if you, again, had a big argument or a big fight with someone, suffering from road rage, something like that. Exactly the same thing would happen. So there you go. So that was so this is another thing you can do, and I think this is a really fun way you can, or a really good sort of like a numerical way to measure stress. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the things that we do at Levitise to help people manage their stress levels. So we look at things. We divide everything up into these buckets, right? So what can help us immediately? What can give us quick solutions? Short-term, medium-term, and long-term. What is beneficial and what is detrimental? Because we want to look at removing the things that are causing us stress, as is practically possible, adding in the things that are beneficial, and seeing how they affect us. And depending on where someone is in their life, depends on how immediately or how we will need to sort of look at these issues. And I put a whole bunch of stuff on here, absolute ton of stuff. And obviously, it's kind of like a doctor throwing up a whole bunch of medical drugs. I mean, there's different solutions for different people, but I'm just going to talk about one just to demonstrate how our sort of framework works, and that's alcohol. Okay, so as you can see, leaving no stone unturned, I put under immediate benefit, I put alcohol / sugar, because if you are stressed and you have a drink, you will immediately feel better. No doubt about it, you're going to feel better. But in the short term, alcohol also goes into detrimental. because you're going to wake up the next day with a hangover and your body's been poisoned and you're going to feel bad. And the medium term, then we have, if you're continuing to use alcohol as a form of stress, you either can gain weight, slip into addiction, dependency and issues like that. And long term, we know that alcohol has many, many negative effects on the body, such as liver failure, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and various other diseases. So that's the way we look at things. But today, I'm not going to go through all of them. We're going to pick out just a few and focus on them, and I'm going to put it through in a mini framework for you later on. So first off is sugar. And a lot of people don't realize how sugar contributes to stress. Sugar is an excitotoxin. It ramps up the central nervous system. It gets you excited, it gets you fired up, and it causes your adrenal glands to release cortisol. And as that has a physical act on the body, then it will translate into a mental stress response as well. I've put in the middle here all the things that, and when I'm really talking about sugar, I'm talking about white sugar. In the middle here, I've put all the things that sugar has scientifically proven to cause, which is high blood pressure, heart attack risk, high cholesterol, pancreatitis, obesity, stress and anxiety, liver failure, fetal insulin resistance. It's addictive, a neurotoxin, and an excitotoxin. Neurotoxin means it's toxic for the brain. What's interesting about this is that all of these things that are caused by sugar are also exactly the same problems you get from drinking too much alcohol. It's difficult to avoid. It's in everything. It's in all processed food. It's in a lot of things we love, cake and candies and cookies and all this kind of stuff. But it is really, really, really bad for us. But just saying quit sugar is lazy advice, because it's quite difficult to do. And we need to recognize that many of us are addicted and have a sweet tooth. So what we've done here is put this chart where you can make better choices. So we've got the best sugars here at the top. And so this would be the best, for example, raw honey and blackstrap molasses, which is better than green stevia, grade B maple syrup, which is still good. Coconut sugar, palm sugars, and they kind of get worse and worse and worse, right? So we would have artificial sweetness as the very worst. And then white sugar I've got down here. So again, the quick thing you can look at is, okay, how much sugar do I have in my life? How much sugar do I have in my diet? And how could I maybe make better choices? So that's something we look at. So that's number one. And then we've got high glycemic foods. So high glycemic foods, which are foods that spike your insulin or spike your blood sugar, have a very similar effect to white sugar and even alcohol. It causes your adrenal glands to release cortisol, which is a physical stress response, which will induce a mental stress response. And you can just see how much sugar affects, or these things affect kids. If you've ever been to a birthday party, and once you've given them all cake, they all walk around and go crazy. Interestingly, my son, because I've been a mean dad and been rather strict with him, I remember the first time, one of the first times he went to a birthday party, he had a big slice of cake, he immediately threw it all up, it all came out. Which to me was very interesting, is that his body rejected it. If I'd have conditioned him to give him a lot of cake or a small amount of cake over many, many years, he could have handled it. But it was quite interesting that it came out. And my wife did the same thing with ice cream a few months later. I think he had 2 globs of ice cream, just came straight out again. The body's rejecting it. So high glycemic foods, and this is the food pyramid that we've been, conditioned by governments around the world. And this is changing now. This is changing, but this is certainly what I grew up believing to be true. But you can just look at you don't need to know anything about science. You don't need to spend years studying nutrition. And just to look at this to know that it's wrong, right? At the bottom, we've got like cakes and cookies and white bread and, you know, croissants and things like that, right? Stuff that we've only been eating for about 30 or 40 years. And then we've got stuff like, you know, meat and fish and fruit and vegetables that we've been eating for 2.4 million years. So have we really, you know, evolved for 2.4 million years eating things that kill us? Or should we really be eating the stuff that is at the bottom of the food pyramid, which is relatively new stuff? And considering we have record numbers of, you know, cancer, diabetes, obesity, etc., I think the common sense indicators would tell us that maybe this is wrong. And of course, eating highly refined carbohydrate foods or too much highly refined carbohydrate foods can spike your blood sugar, spike your cortisol levels, and then you can have a crash. So maybe in the afternoon you feel a bit sluggish and a bit weak, and then the blood also rushes from your brain as well, so you can have brain fatigue. So it's really sets you up for quite a vicious circle of physical and mental stress. Okay, we're going to move on to 3, which is the news. So I went to the BBC website this morning before Sabina approved my presentation, and these were the stories that I picked out of the BBC website. Okay, Theranos founder lied and cheated, trial hears, fire at COVID hospital kills tenant. I'll keep protesting until the Taliban kill me. Pain in his sharp knife, which dulls over time. You went to the BBC website, that's what you're going to read right now. Okay, so what do you notice the theme about these stories? Just pop in the chat. What do you think is negative? There you go. Yeah, very, very negative. Very, very negative. So if you want to practice getting strong, physically strong in the gym, you go in and you lift heavy weights. If you want to practice being good at running, you go out and run a lot. If you want to practice being good at tennis, you need to go and play tennis a lot. So if you want to exercise your brain into feeling negative and stressed all the time, what do you need to practice doing? Reading the BBC website or Channel News Asia, right? And this is called the law of facilitation. The more you practice doing something, the more you're going to get at that. So reading the news is really a total and utter waste of time, to the point that it's negative for you. I gave up reading the news about 8 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And at first you think, oh, if I don't read the news, I'm not going to know what's going on in the world. People are going to think I'm stupid. But actually, it's not true at all. I mean, it's great. You meet up with your friends, and then they talk and say, well, sorry, I don't know. I don't read the news at all. So what's happening with Trump? Tell me what he's been up to. And they'll tell you. And they'll love telling you, right? Tell you. And it's really quite fun. And a lot of the stuff which is going on in the world is not really portrayed, but it's not really the news. It's just what the media outlets want you to hear. It doesn't mean it's representative of everything that's happening in the world. And let me give you an example. This is also from today. This is from the Good News Network. 8 in 10 Americans have taken steps to improve their health since the pandemic started. I thought that was very interesting. I was surprised it was so high, actually. It was encouraging. China bans written exams for 6 to 7-year-olds to reform hyper-competitive pressure in schools. I think that's great. I think there is way too much education. We should all chill out a little bit, particularly with our kids. 100-year-old enters Guinness World Record as oldest powerlifter. I'm into powerlifting myself, so I thought that was pretty cool. New cancer treatments may be on the horizon thanks to mRNA. So that's very interesting. So even if the mRNA vaccines are not quite as effective as we thought they were, or we're told they were, maybe they're going to have a good alternative. So that's quite encouraging. And it seems that albacore tuna supplies are now coming back. So if you want to practice feeling better, being better, what are you going to read? This or this? And just tell me in the chat, just tell me in the chat, out of these BBC stories, which one is going to help make your life better? I'll keep protesting until the Taliban kill me. How's that going to make your life better? Read Afghan women's protest against all male government. How's that going to make your life better? Reading about that. And there is a lot of stuff going on in the world that you never read in the news, like in Burkina Faso and Somalia and places like that. There's a lot of bad stuff. So why should we just read the bad stuff that happens to be topical at the moment? It's someone else's agenda. This is what we should be reading. This will make you feel better. It's going to make people around you feel better. It's going to make the world a better place. Okay, so now we're going to look at breathing. So you can pretty much, any functional medical doctor, naturopath, health coach, holistic lifestyle coach, even the psychologist and the psychiatrist, everyone will agree, but one of the best ways to relax yourself is breathing. So I'm going to use this technique now called 4-6-8 breathing. I'm going to set it up on this website called Exhaler, which I really like. Can you, I'm not sure if you can see that. I think I need to stop sharing my screen and resharing it. So I'll reshare it here. I'm going to move that over to the right. Let's check I've got this set up correct. 4-6-8, there we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to follow this beautiful imagery on the screen, and we're going to together exhale through our mouths for 8 seconds. We're going to inhale through our noses for 4 seconds, and we're going to hold it for 6 seconds, and then we're going to repeat that procedure again. So you can just follow this on the screen, right? So we'll start after this exhale. You can actually exhale through your nose as well, but some people find that quite difficult. So especially for 8 seconds. So inhale, hold, and then exhale. And then inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. So, how does everyone feel? Good? Yeah, breathing is awesome. So I've researched quite a lot of breathing methods, and the 4-6-8 one I like the best. It's really good for bringing down your sympathetic nervous system, boosting your parasympathetic nervous system, making you feel more relaxed. Really, really super. I think it's really important to do that breathing exercise first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up. And you can also do it, you know, if you have any particular stressful event in the day, or to relax yourself before you go to bed at night. But one of the reasons I like it the most that people don't really talk about, it's not because of the physiological benefits, of which there are many, but it's about taking control. When you wake up in the morning and you start thinking about work, what you're going to do for the day, your mind starts racing, you're not in control. You've let your mind run away. So by doing a breathing exercise, saying, hang on a minute, not thinking about work, I'm going to do my breathing exercise first. You're taking back control, right? You're putting yourself in charge. And I think that's really, really important. And that's part of it. You know, if and I'm sure you've heard this before, if you go in to your boss's office and you have an argument, okay, maybe we don't go into office anymore over Zoom, and then you come back out and you're all wound up like this, and they tell you to do the deep breathing, definitely it's going to bring you down. But it's about like taking control, right? And I think that's a really big issue at the moment. We have lost a lot of control, and it creates a lot of stress. So we do that first to relax ourselves. Then I like to do this heart-focused breathing technique. And there are about 30 scientific studies that show how amazing this is for emotional regulation. So creating some stoicism, some emotional balance. And this is step 2, and it's very simple. We do the deep breathing. You don't have to follow the 4-6-8, but once you've done that first, you're already in a pattern of slow breathing, so that's great. And then you do the similar kind of breathing, but you just focus on the heart. You focus on the air coming in, filling your heart, and then coming out of your heart. Going into your heart and coming out of your heart. And if it's a little bit tricky to do that, you can just focus your attention on your heart. If you're very left-brained and very logical, you're going to think, hang on, the air doesn't go into my heart, it goes into my lungs. So maybe then just focus your attention on the heart. But if you're a bit more creative and you can think about the air coming in and coming out, very, very emotionally regulating. So let's try that now, right? So we'll just do a few rounds of that. So you can just go along with me. So breathe in through your nose and think about the air coming into your heart. And then out. And I breathe out through my nose, but you can use your nose or mouth, whatever's easier. And then in. And out. And in. And out. Okay. Hope everyone's super, super relaxed now. So if we move on, you guys are really stuck in. So the first one is to relax you. The second one, to create emotional balance. Okay, last one, number 6. Gratitude. Okay, here is my gratitude journal, my actual gratitude journal from when we entered lockdown at the beginning of, well, it wasn't the beginning of last year. When was it? April last year? Somewhere around that. I'll read it out, right? So you can actually see what I said. So I put, we are grateful for family games. We are grateful for tasty food. We are grateful for resilience and meditation. The reason I'm writing we and not I, because I do this with my son. We are grateful for Chenny, that was our interior decorator. I'm grateful that I can work most of my business remotely. I appreciate the quarantine as an opportunity to create routine, right? So you can see what I'm doing here, right? I'm looking for things, and I'll only do 3 every morning while I'm having breakfast. I'm eating breakfast. Son, what are we grateful for? No, I'm not going to ask you because you're going to say Star Wars, and lightsabers. So he's quite repetitive in that, or Blaze and the Monster Machines. So yeah. So anyway, and I just do it takes like 1 minute, 2 minutes. That's it while I'm having breakfast. And again, there's tons and tons of studies on this. And here's one I got from 2003 where they split these people into these 3 groups. And this goes back to the news, right? So group A were journaling about negative things. Group B were journaling about positive things. And group C journaling about neutral things. And then after X amount of time that they ran this study for a few weeks, I forget how long it was, you can see that the gratitude outlook group was the only group to exhibit heightened well-being across several of the outcome measures for happiness, mood, reduced anxiety, reduced stress, and all those things. So this stuff really, really works well. So really my question is from gratitude journaling, because I'm sure you've probably heard it a million times, it's really important to do. But if you don't do it, then you have to think, why would I not do that? Well, either I'm fine, I'm not stressed, I don't need to. I feel amazing. Okay, great. I don't believe it works. Okay, fair enough. But maybe it's worth trying it for a month or so and see how you feel. Or I'm addicted to myself and who I am. And change is hard, right? So those are really, to me, the only 3 reasons you wouldn't do this. So that's something to think about. So that's a summary, right? So sugar, making better choices. High glycemic foods, making better choices. And I'm not going into details with lists and things. These are things you can research. There's lots of stuff on the internet. And of course, you can always email me, ask me any time you want. News, just give it up. Give it a try. Give it a try for a month. And if you give up the news, then you'll create free time in your schedule to implement these 3 things at the bottom. My recommendation is 3 minutes of breathing as soon as you wake up in the morning. Then you do 4 minutes of heart-focused breathing straight after that. And then 3 lines in your gratitude journal. That's it. Pretty simple. I recommend starting tomorrow morning and continuing for 21 days and seeing how you feel. You could start right now before bed if you wanted to, or this evening. And then maybe we'll get in touch with you in a month's time and see how you got on. So if there are 3,528 hours in 21 days, that's 0.7% of your time exercising your mind. So that's all I'm suggesting, 10 minutes a day. 0.7% of the time exercising your mind to feel better. And who wouldn't want to feel better, right? And then the 99.3% of the time, yeah, you can do what you want in that time. So that's the ones we discussed. Here's a whole bunch of other stuff that obviously we could spend hours and hours and hours talking about. Let me just see. I'm just going to go finish up and then go back to that slide. That's the team. It's the Levitise team. That's all. Thank you very much.